Well, I've said before, and I will say again, that in all the documentaries I've been watching about all the kidnapped girls and women, the police knew right from the word go where those victims were, where those abducted girls were. Take Natasha Kampusch. They had the name and address of Pricklepil, her abductor, almost at the very beginning. They even went to his house and examined his van, but did not go into the house or get a warrant to go into the house. I believe they knew that she was there. Go to America, we've got J.C. Dugard, who was a prisoner for 18 years and had 2 children by her abductor. What she had going for her, I think, was the fact that there were 2 other women there, and funnily enough, in a way, the children themselves. It wasn't solitary confinement, as in the case of Natasha Kampusch, and of course Elizabeth Fritzl. But once again, in that case, they had a perfect description of the abductor's car. He was on the sex offender registry, and they focused all their attention on the stepfather and never followed any other lead. She could have been rescued right at the beginning, but she was there for 18 years. The police, in the case of Elizabeth Fritzl, picked her up and took her back to her father, as happened to me. I have to say, my fate was not quite so bad as Elizabeth Fritzl's. Mark Dutroux, they knew the name and address of the abductor. They knew the name, they knew where he was. They knew it was quite likely that he had the 2 little 8-year-olds who subsequently apparently died of starvation there, although they never produced the bodies. And they imprisoned him. I have said this before, which would ensure that either the children he'd abducted would die, or they could be moved on in his absence. Strange that his wife, stroke partner, fed the dogs but not the kids. And strange that they survived for 4 months. I've said that. I must admit that I'm finding it. I've watched so many documentaries so close together. But J.C. Dugard was very much a case in point. The man was on the sex offender registry. All they had to do was check it and check out his car. And when they finally did find her, of course they found a car that matched in every detail the car that the stepfather had described seeing. I seem to recall they even went to that house. Because people were suspicious. 1 or 2 people, not too many. Not enough. Oh, and he was the one, wasn't he? Don't let me get confused here. Oh yeah. Because he was on the sex, he was seeing a probation officer once or twice a week. And the probation officer suspected absolutely nothing. It was known that there were 2 children in his garden, playing in his garden. He wasn't supposed to have contact with any children, nothing was done. And of course the 2 children were the 2 children he'd forced onto J.C. Dugard. I could just go on and on and on, because I've now watched so many of these. And these are the ones who do get out alive. I dread to think how many are left in dungeons forever, until they're dead. What strikes me especially, it seems to me the American victims get over it, as it were, get back some kind of a life, rather better than the European victims. And I've been wondering why. Well, of course, in the case the Austrian cases, I think there's a lot of things. The Austrians seem to have followed the Nazi method to a T. Both Pricklepil and Fritzl had dungeons that were invisible, impenetrable, and the victims both knew that if anything happened to their abductors, they were dead. They had to live out that knowledge every minute of every day. And each of them, of course, well, in particular Natasha Kampuch was in solitary. Although she was taken out occasionally. And I do think it's actually a good thing in some ways that Elizabeth Fritzl had the company of her children. At least she had other humans. And something to focus her life on, such as it was. But the other thing that really, really strikes me about the Austrian cases is that they overlapped. Which does make me wonder again about a ring, and whether those cases were actually isolated from each other, or whether they were actually connected to each other. Let me see if I can get my dates right. Elizabeth Fritzl went into the dungeon in 1984, aged 18, and came out in April 2008, aged 42. Natasha Kampuch went in aged 10 in 1998 and came out in aged 18 in 2006. So their releases were 2 years apart, both in Austria, both in dungeons, which, God, would make an ordinary prison look insecure. Absolutely no chance of escape whatsoever. Personally, I have to wonder if those two men were in contact with each other via a paedophile ring. They both came up with the same idea. The periods overlapped. They were in the same country. And in the case of Natasha, again, they said they went to the house of the man who'd kidnapped her, saw the white van so clearly described, inspected the van, and then went away without obtaining a warrant to search the house as well. Mind you, it has to be said they'd have had a fucking job to find that dungeon. I've seen the footage of what it was like and how well hidden it was. And of course, no noise she wouldn't have been heard. Nobody knows how Elizabeth Fritzl is doing, nor her children. And as somebody said, Natasha Kampuch puts on a good face, but she's not made a recovery as the Americans I've seen seem to have done. And I actually have asked myself, well, could religion help here? Could religion have helped them? You know, most Americans, well, not now, there's a huge atheist movement in America, but most Americans appear to be Christian. But then Austria is a Catholic country, the last I knew. So you would think perhaps that Natasha would have been somewhat helped by religion, but perhaps not. I don't know. If that were the case, if they believed that someone was watching over them, or was some hope, or having been told in the case of Natasha that, and in fact it's a standard tactic, that her parents didn't care about her, wouldn't do anything to release her. If you had a belief that someone somewhere loved you, and cared about you, I suppose that would help. But it's not really made explicit whether she had that. And here I am, having said how much I hate Christianity, wondering if there are instances when it could perhaps help. Well, I know there are. I know there are people who are helped by their faith. I just wish they didn't use it to beat other people over there. But anyway, let's move away again from that. So my theory, not so new, not so great. The case is certainly in Austria connected, and probably connected to the Belgian case, the Dutroux case. And as for what's going on here in the British Isles, it beggars belief. Although I am an EU leave, I am beginning to wonder if that will cut us off from all potential help, or not. It would remove us to a degree from the European trafficking of children, perhaps, close our borders. But it would also leave us completely at the mercy of this government, which is imprisoning whistleblowers on child abuse, such as Melanie Shaw, for example. What's been done to her is horrendous. But when I listened to the tapes, I was reminded of some of the things that have been done to me as well. So I think when I talk about people who apparently nobody's ever heard of, the powers that be have bloody heard of them, and they've made serious efforts to shut me up to the extent that they are leaving me to die of COPD. It's as simple as that. One doctor told me there was no respiratory rehab, and the next month I had a respiratory rehab appointment that nobody told me about until 2 months later. It wasn't sent to my address. It was sent to the wrong doctor, they said. And instead of thinking, oh, perhaps we better give her a ring and tell her she's got an appointment, they told me 2 months later that I'd missed it because it had gone to the wrong address. I used to kind of think, I had a sort of feeling that I was invincible. I thought, my God, look at all the people who've died around me. Why have they not killed me? I thought I was under some kind of divine protection. How stupid. From the moment that they told me I had COPD, they've done absolutely nothing except leave me to die. For 3 years, I didn't even make a note of it, or at least not a note that anyone else could see to follow up on it. And for the last 6 months, medication reviews, no spirometry, a respiratory rehab appointment that they didn't tell me about, and didn't bother to make another one either, because the COPD nurse said she didn't know if I wanted one. She didn't know whether I would like to breathe or not. And on my way out of her office, I said I'd never heard anything so stupid in my life. I didn't actually call her stupid. Let's get this straight. I just said I'd never heard such a stupid idea. As the idea that, because I hadn't actually asked for another appointment to be made, she thought I didn't want one. So it's a bit about the paedophile rings, the dangers of whistleblowing. Do expect to be harassed to the point of death. Expect that if you blow the whistle. Don't think you're somehow going to escape where other people have not. Princess Diana did not escape. And yes, I do believe that she knew that the royals were involved in paedophilia. And I have my own reasons for believing that. And it has to do with Windsor.